It's now time to have a look at the inquiry form on the contact page. So if we go back to our editor, open a contact.php file, which you'll find inside of the pages directory. Let's remove this blurb here and just leave the heading. And we're going to start with the HTML form tag. Now, form tag will take two attributes, this specific one, you can obviously have more, but we are only going to use method to indicate how we are going to be submitting this information, whether the get or post, and they correspond to PHP's get and post superglobals. And in this case, we are going to use post. Then action, which is where we want to submit this form, and we want to submit this form to exactly the same page. And the route to this page in the URL is simply /contact. So that's our form tag. In between the opening and closing form tag, we are going to do some layout using Zurb Foundation selectors again. So div with the class row. In this row, we're going to have two columns. So div class, and we're going to have two columns on tablet up to basically any large display. So medium, it's going to be medium -6. I want to have half of the layout for one field and half for the other in the same row, and obviously columns class as well. And now let's duplicate this line because we're going to have two of them. In the first one, I will have a select element, which will basically have a list of departments. But before this, let's create a label for this select, and it's going to have 4 attributes, and it's going to be department. And then we have a label, department, colon, and then star after the space to indicate that it's a mandatory field. And then let's create our select element. No selection, select. There we go. And its name will be department as well. And let's just copy because I probably will misspell it at some point. Then ID equals department as well. And that's all. And then in between the opening closing select tag, we are going to put some options. For the time being, I'm just going to put one option with empty value, and it's going to say select 1. So that's our first element. Now in the next column right next to it, we will have an input, but again, label, starting with the label for, let's put on a new line as well, for name, and then the label itself will say name, and again, that's a mandatory field, so we're going to put the star symbol here after the colon. Okay, after this, let's go for input, and now on the new line, we will have type, it's going to be a text, then we will have name, will be the same as for the for attribute of the label, corresponding label, so name, and then ID will also be name. And the default value we will set to null by default, to basically just double quotes without specifying anything. We will fill it in later on. Okay, so if we save it and preview it in the browser just to see what we're actually building, there we go. The select drop down on the left, and then name field on the right. So that's how we starting with our form. Okay, let's go back to the editor. The next one will be, and then let's just copy this entire row. I'm just going to copy this and let's collapse it so we can see things a little bit clearer here. And this one will be, rather than department, obviously we're not going to have a second select, we're only going to have a text fields, so probably better if we actually select this second one, name, and replace this select with this name. So we have two names basically copied. Now we're going to replace the first one with the email, so this one will be email address, and then label saying email, and the type of this input will be email, so email. Name will be email as well, and ID will be email. So basically they correspond to this for attribute. And this is what we're going to receive as a variable, as a post variable. So it's going to be, for instance, later on when we're going to use it to retrieve the variable, it's going to be post email. This is how we're going to get it through PHP. But we'll use a little bit more sophisticated approach anyway. So this is the email address that we're going to be collecting from the visitor. And the other one is telephone. So telephone, and let's give it a label, telephone or telephone number, it's up to you. Then type will be text, name will be telephone again, and ID will be telephone. Now, for those who aren't familiar with web forms, A type basically says what sort of value to expect. These are just tags, so any alphanumerical characters will be valid. For this one, we need to make sure that the input, whatever is entered onto this field, is of an email type, so validates as an email basically. There are several different types that we can use. The most popular, the one that's most commonly used, is the text. Obviously, email if you have email, and some other ones. Okay, so again, let's copy this entire raw element with 2 columns with 2 input fields. We've got email and telephone. If we save it, actually, do you know what? Not, because we don't really need any more input field. Let's just collapse it for now. So we have the first one has department and the name. Second one has email and telephone. And another row we're going to have here is just going to have inquiry. So text area this time. So row. And inside we're only going to have 1 column this time. So div with a class column, rather than splitting this into different screen dimensions. It's just a column, single column. And then we are going to have a label. For this time it's going to be a comment, let's call it, and in between the opening and closing label tag comments, or you can say anything, inquiry or anything like this. I'm just going to keep it like this. And then we go for the text area tag, and text area will have name corresponding to this for attribute as well. As I said, comment. Then we have ID comment as well. This for attribute uses ID, so when you click on this label, it's going to put the cursor inside of the field with the same ID, basically. That's how it works. And then for the style, what we are going to do, let's say that we want this, the height of this text area to be, say, 10 rem. And then that's pretty much it. So this is our text area for the time being. And then the last row, div with the class row. And again, div with the class column. It's just a single one. And inside of this one, what we're going to do is put our input. So input, and it's this time, the type is going to be submit, which is the type of a submit. Basically, when you click on this element, it will submit the form. And it's obviously, when you're dealing with the type submit of an input, it's represented as a button. It looks like a button rather than a field. And then class, again, this time Zerp Foundation styling, small button, we are going to make it. And the value will be, which is the label on the button, will say send message. And if we save it, I think that's all. If we preview everything in the browser, refresh the page, and there we go. Our form is now ready. Obviously, this comments doesn't seem to work very well. Let's quickly check what I've done wrong. And obviously, I've forgotten to say what I want to be 10 rem, which is height, obviously, of this element. So height, colon, and then 10 rem. Now it should be better. So if we refresh it, there we go. Now it looks much better. Okay, so we have it all ready. Obviously, this is just the static HTML form. We need to, first of all, pre-populate this department drop-down menu. Then we're going to try and validate the form on submission and so on. So let's look at this department drop-down menu in the next video.